afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'd like to welcome you all to our PRHA meeting. Portsmouth Redevelopment Housing Authority Board of Commissioner meetings are held on the third Thursday of each month at 5 p.m. All meetings are conducted at PRHA's main office, 3116 South Street, Portsmouth, Virginia, 23707, unless otherwise noted. All members of the public are welcome to attend. Commissioner, before you have the agenda for Thursday, July 18, 2019. Have roll call by Madam Secretary.
All right, Commissioner Jiggets.
Present.
All right, Commissioner Lalonde.
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan.
Here.
Commissioner Roberts. Commissioner Washington. Vice Chair Chapman.
Present.
And Chair Smith.
Yeah,
We do
present.
have a quorum.
And of course, you let the record show that I think Commissioner Washington wanted his to be shown as an excused absent.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he sent everybody an email. I guess
Right.
Commissioner Roberts too, I guess.
Okay.
Commissioners, you have before you the minutes from June 20, 2019 minutes. There's your name registered and need a motion to approve minutes.
Move to approve. Second.
Madam Secretary?
All right, Commissioner Jiggets.
Yes.
Commissioner Lalonde.
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan.
Yes.
Vice Chair Chapman.
Same.
And Chair Smith.
Yes. All right, old business. Mr. Bland. You have any old business today, sir?
On old business, have, Karen and I, did meet with, the attorney with the city just to kind of start going over the old, corporate agreement from
Corporation
1956. So we are meeting with the, attorney with the city, so hopefully the next, prior to our joint meeting with the, city council in October, we should have something that everybody can look at prior to that joint meeting to try to update the old one that we have.
Thank you, sir. All right, finance. Got it, Shannon. Thank you, Mr. Bland.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, before you, I have the quarterly reports. I'm not really gonna spend a lot of time on them. Central Cost Center, the COCC, Swanson, the public housing sites, and the HCV program are all represented as 12 months of operation, as we are, June 30 was our end of our fiscal year, so I'm kind of like in the middle of preparing to do our HUD submission next month, so got the consultants in here, and we've really been trying to tidy up and get things in place so we can get that submitted on time. The partnerships are all based on 6 months of operation, because they're calendar year. Just brief notes, COCC, at least for the quarter, did operate at a slight loss. Overall, there was a profit, and that's because we realized a developer fee. Again, we don't really like to count on that, because it's not really from year to year. We don't know, it's not a regular revenue that we, spring that we can count on. But just so you know that the other one that's kind of substantial, but it's not really, needs to be alarmed, is the Housing Choice Voucher Program is showing a loss. HUD only did send us in around $900,000 for the month of June in an attempt to try to spend down some more of our reserve money. So when they're only sending 900, then we're paying out 1.3. It's gonna, make them spend a little bit out of that account. Everything else seems to be operating pretty normal, other than cottages did have a little bit more of a loss than it normally does, and the cottages suffered quite a bit of loss in the subsidy that we were getting, because we had that adjustment in the, so with it only being 16 units, so I gotta take and tear that ledger apart and kind of see if there's anywhere else that we can maybe like put some of those expenses, but overall everything is looking pretty decent.
Commissioner,
Yeah,
Rhonda?
CFO and I met before the meeting here just to discuss a couple items. Very, very pleased again on her, how much she has her finger on the pulse. We talked about cash on hand, we talked about accounts payable. We didn't get around to accounts receivable, but we did talk about accounts receivable last time, so they definitely keeping their eye on it. Mr. Bland, cash is always one that gets organizations in trouble. And I guess a couple things that, well, at least one thing she couldn't answer was, there may be some breakthrough on the Swanson monies?
Yes, Lisa can bring you up to date as part, when you get to, if you hold off on that, when we get down to my
Okay.
report, she can bring you up to date.
The other one is, I just wanna, we're sitting on a little bit of a bubble right now because of the Effingham money that we got from the sale of that. I just wanna make sure y'all are keeping us apprised if we're gonna be dipping into that unrestricted reserves, especially when I see losses in the COC. That money's gotta come from somewhere. And I just wanna, if we're gonna use reserves for normal operations, that's a problem, right? So just a note about cash. I keep my, if there's one thing that I like to keep my finger on is where cash is at. So, but that's all I had. Again, I think great job, and I appreciate it. Thanks, Shane.
I have a question. Well, you go ahead with yours first.
What is there a formula, I'm sure there is, that HUD uses to determine how much is too much in reserves? When they're determining whether or not to, they say, like you said, they only funded 900,000 because we had too much in reserves. Is there like a level where they say it's too much, or they just arbitrarily do it?
Yeah, I've not really been able to work through what the reasoning is, because it'll go fine for several months, and all of a sudden we'll get a notification to say, hey, we're, but we do have like 800,000 that they're physically holding, so I have no access to that.
Sure.
And then, in the bank account, I have to separate stuff out as to whether it's restricted or unrestricted.
Right.
And so what it is when they're shorting that, I'm basically depleting my restricted number. And then if that becomes totally depleted, then we would have to notify HUD and say, hey, can I have some of that money that you're holding on to help out?
And I think they normally look at if you have more than what you would need for a 2 months period.
Okay.
Okay,
Commissioner Jiggett?
Thank you. Back to the 800,000 that they shorted you, that's correct?
800,000?
800,000, what's that?
No, they sent us 900,000. And we normally pay out, it's usually between 1.2 and 1.3 and half expense, so the difference is right around 300,000.
So 300,000 they shorted you.
Yeah.
And you normally there's never any challenge to that for them to do some type of reconciliation to justify the reason that they are doing that?
I mean, they do, I believe it's quarterly reconciliations. Just like say if we spend more, even like in our admin, if we end up taking on more expense, even though we're kind of like using our own money to cover it, they may end up sending us more money down the road. But they're very good about doing quarterly reconciliations on this, but usually if HUD says they're gonna pull the money.
You all ever question it?
Well, the other thing too is, as part of the mini retreat we're gonna have in August, at the person better here today, that was gonna be part of, she was gonna go through how her do that formula as part of the mini retreat with you. So at August, prior to the August board meeting, she will go through that. Our financial advisor will be more clearly be able to answer that
How
question.
that's working.
Yeah, how her does that formula, yeah.
Okay, and then I guess my other question is, refresh my memory, please. What was the money we derived from the sale of the Effingham Plaza?
It was 2 million,
No, it's 4.
4, yeah.
It was 4 million. Does HUD have a way of knowing that we have that money, so they just sort of play with what they send us?
Well,
That was-
yeah, it's non-federal, and it was owned and bought by one of our wholly owned properties. I
Right.
do have to report that I have this cash sitting out there as part of that entity, but they really are not able to touch any of that.
It's not HUD money.
It's not HUD money.
No, I understand it's not HUD money, but could it be that since they see that we have that,
No.
they start playing with this other
HCD
and
is
short
totally
us?
separate. They do give us an ABA at the beginning of every year, and you have to spend within that. I think it's like 98%.
And you know how I don't like those acronyms. What are you saying for, is the ABA?
Annual Budget Authority.
Annual
Yeah.
Budget Authority,
Yeah.
okay. But you feel comfortable that they are not in any way penalizing us, if, for lack of a better term, because
comfortable
we
they're not.
sold the property?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Jakes. Finance. All right, procurement. Do we have anything? Nothing. Housing. Nothing. Development. Yes, sir.
Housing Committee met with Carol and Val. Again, very impressed with the way they're operating. Very impressed with the Housing Choice Voucher Program and where we're going with that. And again, the coordination between Carol and Shannon is fantastic on this reserve money that has to be spent, so I really appreciate that. Just to beat the drums for Carol, they're working very, very hard to validate the wait list. I'm always concerned that the wait list is manageable, and those people that deserve to be on the wait list are on the wait list. So there's a lot of great work being done on the wait list, and Carol let me know that possibly sometime in the next year, early next year, we may be opening up the wait list again. So I appreciate that. Val, on the other side, I still want to keep the focus on Dale. I know a lot of efforts with the police chief. The lieutenant governor had an opportunity to go out there and walk that, and I know I had the opportunity to go out there with him when he was out there. But you know, whether and again, I don't have the answers. Cars that don't belong out there, trash, the stuff at night, how we're working with the police, how we're working with the sheriffs. I'm hearing all of it. Just want to make sure we're keeping our finger on the pulse, keeping the hammer down. Didn't talk to Dolores, but if there's any way, Mr. Bland, that we can get family programs out there, kids programs out there. I know they don't have a community center. It is a challenge. It will continue to be a challenge, but we are the landlord out there. That is our property. We're the ones who make the decisions on what goes on out there. So it is the #1 crime area in the city. The police acknowledge it. I mean, they've got 2 walks now in the last month, but I want to make sure that our presence is felt there as strongly as everybody else is there. So whether it be trash, whether it be cars that need to be towed, let's just make sure that we're showing as much effort as we can show out there. We have a lot of good things that we can bring, and you know, we've had a lot of great stuff with FSS, a lot with jobs from the significant activities report. I'd just like to see more and more. We did this at Dale, so that's all I have about housing. But thanks, both. Great job, Carol. Great job, Val. Thank you.
Okay, I would just like to say one thing, and I do have to go back to procurement. I think you know from the email I sent subsequently about the roofing contract, I was having second thoughts about us awarding it, because I thought I remember, Ms. Adams, that you said that you would subsequently speak with the low bidder about trying to see if he had the capabilities to do the contract because it was so low. Did I hear you correctly at that last meeting about that? And were you able to get some additional information from the low bidder, not the one who was awarded the contract?
I actually, I sent a request to the low bidder
Mm-hmm.
for additional information for our responsibility review. She did not provide me the information
Okay.
when I asked her to, but she did come in and we met.
Okay.
We met, she told me that the information, she had sent it, but it got mixed up in her email some kind of way, so it was never received. So she was supposed to give it to me by another date. She
Mhm.
did not meet that deadline. It came in the afternoon, a day later. and I told her, I could not accept it because it wouldn't be fair to the other bidders, because she had 2 opportunities and she didn't meet both of them.
Okay, and just give me a little bit more detail. What was she supposed to do that she didn't do?
I had a whole list, I gave her a list of items to give us some additional information, such as, we can discuss this now because the award's been made.
Right, because I saw
So,
it posted on the
it's been
website.
posted.
Mhm.
She was supposed to provide information such as, her financial capability, her experience in doing multifamily housing, because
Mhm.
all she had showed us was she had some single-family homes.
Mhm.
Nothing that was multifamily commercial. She was supposed to provide us some information on organization chart, resumes of her key people that would be involved in the contract,
Mhm.
and some additional information that I had asked her.
Did you ask her for her banking relationship?
I asked her for financial statements to
And not
show
her
that
bank
she had some
relationship.
information. No,
Mhm.
because I didn't need that, I just need to know that she had the financial capability to do this job, because it was a pretty significant job, and there's nothing to show based on her past, what she showed us in her bid that she could do that.
Even if, I mean, couldn't she have gotten a performance bond?
She could have, well, she was awarded it, we would always do a payment of
Okay.
performance bond, but we're not gonna take that chance, because by that time,
Mhm.
by the time the person you award to does not perform, and you have to call the bond, that's a whole nother process, we've been through it before, and it's quite a difficult process, and we're dealing with a project that we're trying to get completed, before we have another hurricane come in and do more significant damage to the project.
Okay. And this is my last question. Naively, because you did say she has done single-family roofing, is it that much difference, the performance between a single-family roof replacement and a multi-unit roof replacement?
It is definitely different, and it's skill. It's the
Mhm.
skill, if you could take one crew and do a house, whereas if you're doing a property,
Mhm.
you're gonna need more than one crew, you're gonna need several crews to work, and you're gonna have to order because when you contract with us,
Mhm.
you have to be able to pay for everything in advance, because we don't pay until, at least 30 days. You could submit your first invoice 30 days after you begin your work.
Okay.
And so we have another 30 days to pay you. So theoretically, you need to go 60
And
days.
have cash flow.
And you have to pay your people, so you have
Mhm.
to have that cash flow, and you have to have the arrangements with your contractors, or have the money to pay your people and your contractors, because,
Okay.
and so that's a lot different than when you're just doing a roof on a single family home,
Mhm.
which may be I think a $5,000 or $6,000 job, where you're talking about, something that was several $100,000. I think it was
Okay.
close to $500,000 for
Okay.
her.
Well, thank you for that additional information. I appreciate it.
All right, our next item we have is development.
It's under development, but
Under
it's really
development.
a legal matter, so I'll let Karen talk about it.
We have a resolution, and I believe everybody has a copy of it. It's under development.
Yes, ma'am. Resolution 2019-34, resolution authorizing Fourth Street Development Housing Authority to form a tax exempt entity.
The formation of this is important for us to continue our developments that we're currently involved in, and for future developments. The tax exempt entity is important for the low-income tax credit, to make sure that process can take place. And that's the purpose of this resolution, is so that we can form a new tax exempt entity, so we can continue and make sure that these developments continue on. So that's pretty much the case.
Gotcha.
This is to form a new one?
Yes.
Or two? I thought we already were one.
Right, but we want to form a separate one, because currently the one that we have, our previous members were previous employees, so they are not in a position to elect new officers or directors, which we would need to proceed with these current developments that we're working on. So we are in the process of trying to get that updated. But just in case we want to have backup, in order to continue with this development with,
Makes sense.
with the tax credit, with the, I mean, the new,
So all these developments that we've been doing up until today, they were under the old?
yeah, we only have
nonprofit?
one, yeah, we only have one, Portsmouth Development Corporation is our only tax exempt.
Right, but
Mhm.
all the developments that we did that involved tax credits were under the old nonprofit?
No, it has to do more with the IRS regulation. So I guess a couple of years ago, when the 168 exemption requires that you have to have a tax exempt entity. So we had PDC that was formed probably in the 80s. But as Karen said, those employees are no longer here. So.
Well, what, again, I'm still confused. I know IRS regulations. What are we doing with the old nonprofit? We're just gonna disband it?
No, that's what I said, we have reached out to those, members to get their to see if they will resign.
Mhm.
And then we would, the board will appoint new director, so we would have.
So why do we need a new one then?
In the event that we don't get the old ones to sign the resignations, we have to have a majority, it's 3. And in the
Okay.
event, because we do need one, so you follow what I'm saying, so if we don't
Well,
get
no,
a
I
response.
don't follow, that's the thing. I just, nonprofits have to be managed, all right? Nonprofits have to have a board, nonprofits have to have bylaws, nonprofits have to have organizational structure, they have to have regular meetings, they have to have regular minutes. Who's gonna, obviously, we haven't been managing the nonprofit we had before, and I don't know who's supposed to manage it. I mean, the nonprofit does, well, I don't see where they report to us. Because a nonprofit stands by itself, different tax ID number, the whole 9 yards. I mean, it's just a separate entity. So I'm just confused. I understand why we need it. If we had it, then just dust it off and fix it.
And that's what we're trying to do.
Why in the case, I mean, this is one of those, oh, by the way, in case we can't. Well, then bring it up when we can, because where is this, getting this thing 36 hours ago about a nonprofit, and knowing what I know about nonprofits, it is a whole different entity, a nonprofit, and managed a whole different entity, and unless we're all on the board of it, then we will have no say-so about what that nonprofit does.
Well, that's what we're gonna do. So the previous articles and bylaws the board didn't have control over it. And so now we will be making that change when the old board resigns. So it was done in the 80s, I guess. So I'm not sure why it was written that way, because it should have never been written in a way that certain members or employees, have control over it. It should be controlled by the board. And so we're kind of correcting the wrong that something was done. And so in order to do that, we have to get them to resign, those 3 members, or 2 of the 3 members to resign. And then we can have the board have control over that entity.
Because
I have a question too,
on the
go
old one, you had, former executive director, Danny Cruz,
The former was.
And Danny
Short.
did.
It
and Mr. Short.
It was, no, he's not. It was, Danny Cruz,
Cruz,
Mr. Wheatley, and,
Right.
Mr. Short.
Right, so what
like
we're
that.
trying to do, about the housing we're trying to do is update it so that the new board would be the board here, would be this board here.
Well, it seems like we've got 2 things going on here, all right. One is, I'm still not finished with the conversation on the old one. And if I'm not mistaken, every nonprofit is supposed to have a clause in it about dissolution of the entity and what happens to supposedly there's assets, supposedly there's financial statements, supposedly, in some cases, people get paid money.
I was gonna say.
People get money paid from a nonprofit, so, I don't know, is this an off-books entity?
It's in that other entity. one.
Yeah, I figured you were gonna say that.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
so I've got a lot more questions before I start voting on something new, because something's still hanging out there. So, do we have tax credit properties, tax credit projects that are attached to the old nonprofit?
No,
No.
we have PHDC,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
So, I mean,
For
I
the
don't think
Portsmouth
we've
Housing
used this one
Development.
since, when the last time we used this entity?
I do very little.
Well, I guess I'm just asking that we have just
What we can
figure
do
out
is-
what we had.
This is
What do we had, what happened to it?
And what we
Because I
can-
just don't wanna make sure we don't make the same mistake again, because you're telling me something about employees. there's never been a nonprofit that I know of that has employees who are officers of a nonprofit. So what you're telling me, what this organization did was illegal, let alone improper.
Well, I can't speak for the past, but what we can do, if we want to, we can just table this and get the information to you, further information to you, and bring it back up in August.
Let me ask a couple questions. If I'm
And I
understanding
have a question
correctly,
too.
the purpose behind this is to help us apply for future tax credits, correct?
Correct.
It doesn't mean a nonprofit owns it. What you're saying is that we have to have a nonprofit arm in order to apply for the tax credits. So all of the Dale 1, Dale 2, well, that's a separate partnership, but anything else going forward, still owned by PRHA. We just have to have this other, so there's nothing owned by the nonprofit. It's just, it's a vehicle to allow us to get to
Correct.
those tax credits.
I don't think that's accurate. The nonprofit must own something.
Yeah, it's a way to allow the investors to claim,
Tax.
the 168.
Yeah.
Because it's a wholly owned subsidiary,
Yeah,
correct?
appreciation, yes.
Or
Mhm.
the nonprofit's part of PRHA, it's
Yes.
just a.
Well,
Correct.
what I would think would make the most sense is that this particular item would go in a closed session, so we can discuss it further, because I have some questions. I'm not saying it goes in closed session today, but I have some questions when you make the statement to try to persuade the officers to resign. So, I mean, something like that I think needs to be fully vetted in a closed session where we can feel comfortable to talk about those particular officers who have not resigned for whatever reason, to see exactly what this is taking on. So that would be my recommendation, because I think according to Bruce, you really want it brought back at a different time. Is that correct, Bruce?
Yeah, there's just too many questions.
Yeah, to clarify. So, I mean, I think it should be an agenda item in closed session, you know. If you wanted to do it today, fine. If not, for the next meeting. I know you want to get to this resolution adoption, but that might be the quickest way to get there if we can go into closed session so we can discuss it further.
Well, first of all, there would have to be a exemption, a closed session exemption for something of this nature, and I would have to see if that's
What do you mean
something.
by that?
In order to go a closed session or closed meeting, you have to have a
The reason.
state code exemption.
Yeah, right.
And I'm saying I would have to.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, I would
okay.
have to, just, to see if there is something that would.
Is this holding anything up? I mean, if we waited another month, is this gonna hold?
It
Or is
could
this-
potentially, we do need this to move forward with the closing of Lexington 1.
Well, then I would
So-
suggest maybe we discuss it in closed session today.
agree.
Because I realize, I understand the concerns and so forth, and,
Well, I didn't
but I
see and
think
agree
this is
what I
a
suggested.
lot more innocuous than we're giving it credit for, so I would say maybe add it to a closed session for today.
Well, how did WODA apply for tax credits? Or
You
am
don't
I, am I,
need-
am
you
I
don't need it
am I
to apply
confused?
for tax
You don't need
credits.
it for tax
You don't need it to apply.
It's just
to
when the
application.
investors, want to use a special election, you're supposed to have the nonprofit organization.
But these are when we're a part of it, we just sold property to
Yes.
WOGA. That's their own issue. This is related to properties that PRHA is involved in,
Right,
like Lexington, Dale, so forth.
right. I think it also like something kind of can become like a taxed corp, I mean, we have to file a 990 anyway on the.
Right, and that's public information. You can pull
We
a
do it for
990
PDC, it's just there's not been a
anytime
lot
on the
of
internet.
activity.
It hasn't been enacted.
There hasn't been any activity on the PDC. And I think in the last, properties, I think they used the PHDC, which is our other entity that like bought Pine and Holly, but it's not a tax exempt. It's a corporate of some form.
I understand why we need it. I understand completely. I just think we're rushing into it. To form a nonprofit is a, first of all, legal thing that needs to be done. But there's there's officers that need to be set up. There's articles of incorporation need to be set up. There's bylaws that need to be set up. And you're saying we need it right away. Well, I don't, even to apply to the IRS, you're not gonna get it overnight. You can get a tax ID number, but you're not gonna get a tax exempt. You're not gonna get a tax exempt notification until you send all that stuff in, bylaws, financials, officers, articles of incorporation.
But you need
So-
approval before we do that, correct? We can't form, we can't send off that information until we.
This is allowing us the authorization to do those things. That's what.
Authorizing, it's authorizing the chairman, the vice chairman, and the executive director to do it. That's the way the resolution's written. It's not authorizing us to do it.
But again, the
Right.
nonprofit doesn't own anything, correct?
Correct.
No.
Yeah, it's just a vehicle for the investors.
But that could change, so, I mean, I agree with Bruce, or Commissioner Lalonde. And I thought we basically decided we would try to take this into closed session. Are you
And
able to
I'm looking at the exemptions and there's no exemption.
take it into closed session to discuss the dissolution of a nonprofit
That's not what this
501c3?
is, this is the formation of a new.
Wait a minute, wait, I know that, let me finish. As well as the establishment of the new 501c3. You can do both. We can,
Nope, so unfortunately.
um,
So what are our
See the
options?
exemptions.
no, I mean, because we go into closed session all the time. I'm trying to figure out what is such different about this one.
So 36 hours ago, we just figured out that we needed to have a nonprofit to move forward with Lexington Place. I don't move that quickly on a multi-million dollar project. I just don't move that fast.
When did you find out, though?
Well, because this entity, has a little activity we haven't used, we couldn't even find the bylaws and the articles of corporation, so we had to write to the IRS to get that information. And so when we got that information back,
Mhm.
that's when we realized that, hey, these three members are a part of this tax exempt entity, and they're the ones that pretty much have the sole discretion or decision-making ability. So, that being said, we knew that we just couldn't have this board appoint, new members. So we had to go back and we have to get them to resign, and then this board can, appoint new members to it.
It would have been
Which is-
good for us to have the paperwork
you know.
for the previous 501c3
Right.
as part of our packet too.
So, I don't know what the rules were back in the 80s. I think, when was it created, Kim?
It hasn't changed that much with 501c3.
I think it was in
No.
the mid-80s or something, so I'm not sure what the rules are, what the requirements are. Certainly,
Let me see.
today, that wouldn't be ideal, to certainly have, specific, employees named as members. You would need to do it by positions, and this board would need to have control to appoint, new members to that. And that wasn't done back then, but maybe it was okay then, I don't know. And I'm sure those former employees don't want any liabilities related to them. They probably don't even know they're on this as a member, okay? This is
Oh,
so
I bet
old.
you they do.
So this has been back from the 80s.
No,
We
I
haven't
know,
had
I know a
any
couple of them.
activity,
I know they do.
So I can't say, I just
They're
don't know
very
why they
conscientious
would
about things like
subject
that.
themselves to that liability if they do.
Mhm.
Well, and I recognize people's disagreements and so forth, but I really don't want to hold up the progress of this. And the explanation, as I understand it, is sufficient for me, so I would make a motion to accept the resolution as written.
On readiness, on the motion. And I feel this way, if you have any commissioner who has concerns about anything being brought to this board, we don't ever want to just ramrod it through because you want to try to please the authorities, employees who want to get this done. You have questions about it, and out of respect for our fellow commissioners, we need to be cognizant of what their concerns are and try to work through those concerns without just ramrodding a motion through.
I respect your opinion, but I have my own.
Well, this is not an opinion, this is
Well, it is your
actually,
opinion.
no, and
It
I'm
is.
not going to argue with you today, Moss.
Or,
No, it's
I made my
not.
motion, so if you.
Well, it's
if you-
unreadiness on the
There you go,
motion.
sir.
Okay. Chair has received the motion.
Unreadiness on the motion.
Okay. Chair needed a second.
Okay. Yes, we have a motion and a second, so
We received the motion, we just need a second. You said.
Oh, okay.
No, nobody made a
Nobody
second on
It
it.
just dies, we just have to do it again sometimes, so. I guess we gotta defer this matter to our next meeting.
Or a special meeting, special call meeting, if necessary, maybe.
Human Resources, do you have anything, reports, Mr. Bland?
Commissioners, you received the June significant activity report. Any question on any item that was in that report?
Yeah, just two things. One, Family Fun Night, congratulations. I thought it was great. I had an opportunity to go out there. The food wasn't out there yet, so I was a little upset. But, I thought it was a great night, and I don't know where we're gonna get in there with it, but I really appreciate the work that's being done on the website. I think it's gonna really be fabulous, and I think you all are gonna be very, very, very happy of what the website's gonna look like. Very informative, very colorful, very, very timely, so I appreciate all the work Mr. Bland and staff has done on the website.
In terms of the report, don't look, don't cheat. How many units does the PRHA have? So I said, don't look at the report. When I was at the conference, one of the commissioners from another state asked the question, and I went blank. But from now on, I will not be blank on it. It's 1,433 units. Am I correct? And I will remember that forever because it's something we should know. But you know, when we get the report and it's broken down
Also,
by the units.
1,813 that have housing choice vouchers, and we're driving towards at least 1,000 more, so it's even more exciting. So we have over 3,300 families that we're supporting for this PRHA.
Okay, now you're
And
trying to get me. Okay,
Yes,
all right.
so- You only got half the story. So
Okay.
This organization is doing tremendous.
Yes,
tremendous work.
the employees are. They really are.
Tremendous work.
Yeah, 3 times, yeah. The only other thing I have is that, any other question on the June significant report? Okay.
You got it, Mr. Bland.
Met with the city manager and some of her staff, and the city manager asked us to look at the cost, what it costs for tot lots, and the city manager is going to see if they can take some money from community development block grant, and so we can put tot lots for the small kids at Swanson and Dale. So we are getting those, we're getting that cost, going to get that back to the city manager. That meeting was, I think it was Tuesday, if I remember. We met with the city manager in reference to that. So the other thing too is when we meet in August as part of the discussing how the HAP reserves are done, we would also, a part of that, do what we call a 2-year forecast for Section 8, so you see how, over the next 2 years, how that's forecast. When we start putting additional vouchers on the street, that will give us more revenue coming to our COCC. That would be a part of that. And I know there's some issue with cars with no tags, but from our research, we find that what happened is a lot of time during the daytime at Dale and at a lot of our communities, people come and go, and those cars are not owned by our residents. It's, there are non-residents who come in off and on with the cars. They may park. They don't park them there permanently. They just park and they go visit somebody, and then our managers put notices on the cars and they disappear, and then after a while they come back again. But I think that's a problem throughout the city with people riding around with dead tags on a particular vehicle. But I can say when the staff see those cars out there, they do put a notice on those vehicles, making the owner of the car aware if they don't move the car, it will be towed away. And when they see that notice, they move it now. But sometimes they will bring that car back occasionally, off and on. So that's a really tough one, but we are aware of it, and we are trying to, when we notice that, we do put tags on the cars. As far as the trash in some of our communities, especially Dale, we would say Dale and Swanson, I know that we do we're policing all day, but as soon as we finish policing, the next day that trash is back. And what we have also, sometimes folks, non-residents come in and use our grounds to dump their stuff on, because when you look at some of the bulk items, there's no way it can go into our units. But we are aware of the trash and work very hard to try to minimize it. And it is something that we know that we had to work on regular. We don't have as much of it like at Seaboard or Hamilton, or what we call our more modernized community, but for some apparent reason, based on the location of Dale, especially location of Dale, it seemed to be a dumping ground for non-residents coming in there to put that trash, not only in Dale, but just in that Prentice Park
That
area
area.
as a whole. I know there's a lot on the corner by the train tracks, and they dump in there. I remember one of the owners of the lot reached out to me, wanted to know if we were interested in the lot. I said, no, we are not, because he said he was having a problem every time he cleaned that vacant lot, trash goes back on that lot. I think you probably passed by, you know exactly where, by the railroad track.
Yeah, I do.
And Turnpike, I mean, not Turnpike,
Yeah.
and Deep Creek, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I do.
but we are aware of it, and we are constantly working on the trash situation, yeah. And that's all I have.
Gotcha. Alrighty, that was your departmental updates too, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Commissioners' comments?
Just one, we've got a joint session with council in October. Just ask that whatever the agenda that we're gonna be advancing, that we know about it before we walk into the meeting. The last 2 times I've gone, I didn't know what we were gonna talk about until we sat down. So there could be just a little bit of advance notice, so we can support whatever the authority wants to do. We can support, at least have some thoughts in our head of how we can craft our support for y'all.
Let me just say, if you have any items you want to be on that October agenda, if you could get those to me, I would appreciate it. If you just shoot me an email, if you have any thoughts on things you want to have on that agenda.
Yeah.
Because normally what we do, we prepare the agenda and then we submit it to the city manager. And we're not in control if any of those items are deleted or any changes made on it. Like last year, we did submit the agenda early, and when we will do that, but we will submit to the board what we will be sending to the city prior to the meeting.
But the mayor's always been very generous at the end to ask if we had anything, and
Right,
I just,
yeah.
if anybody's gonna bring up anything, that's fine. I mean, independently you can, but just like to be able to support what other commissioners are gonna say,
Okay.
that's all.
I would, when you met with the city manager, I wish you had brought up about using the CDBG funds to bring back the housing repair program, the owner occupant home repair program that we talked about a couple months ago. And at that point, Ms. Winston, you were saying you get calls frequently from people inquiring about the program. So the next, in addition to the, what did you call it, the TOT program?
The top lot.
The TOT lot, I mean, I would ask that that be discussed as part of the CDBG money, because it was funded through CDBG money before. And with the number of senior citizens who are owner occupants of houses, it was a popular program and it was a beneficial program. So, I mean, that I would really stress with the next discussion with the city manager to get some of that money for that program.
What I can do is I can add that as a discussion item for the joint meeting in October. I think that would probably be the appropriate place to have it. This way, the city manager's there, the mayor's there, as well as the city council members. So I think that would be the appropriate place to have it as one of the talking points for the October joint meeting.
Well, I guess I would ask, how did the tot lot discussion come about? Because you didn't hold off on that, so.
The tot lot discussion came about because the city manager was looking at a way to try to decrease some of the negative activity going on in those communities. So that was a suggestion to the city manager that housing authority, but we may have some money in our community development block grant that we can use, and she reached out to us in reference to give a call and get back to them in reference to that.
Okay, okay.
Any other comments, Commissioner? Okay. None? All right, I really don't have any comments, I don't. It was a great job, what you did over there with the, Lieutenant Governor over the Seaboard, and then the walk on the Dale Zone, that was good stuff.
That was.
You enjoyed your conference? You enjoyed the conference?
I did. It was a number of new kids on the block.
It was a lot of them.
Yeah, a lot of new kids on the block.
It was a high turnover.
And certainly there was one track that there should have been accommodations for all of us who are first-time commissioners. It's called the Pre-Commissioner Oversight Training.
We know what you're talking about.
But
Yeah,
they
that's the
only
first part.
had one, they
That,
only had one class and it closed quickly.
Oh, yeah, it does.
Yeah, but if you know you got 100 new first time, then you make
Put it out there.
arrangements, you know.
We've been through it. You put it out, they shut down quick, don't it?
Yeah, so my oversight and monitoring was a good training session. That went 2 days, 2 full days. And in terms of RAD, when you talk among the other commissioners, the idea that we really do need to always have an attorney who specializes in RAD. Because without a specialist, we could end up on the short end of the stick as a housing authority in the negotiating of the contract. So I took that away. And then also, I was able, believe it or not, me being a first-time commissioner, so new, there were some seasoned commissioners who served for like 15 years, and they were under the opinion that you still had to do 1-for-1 replacement of units. And they did not realize that that was no longer the case. And that took some time. I brought up the website, and on Lexington, Lincoln Park, you could see where it was going from the original units to what the new units were going to be. And so that persuaded this particular commissioner, because they indicated that HUD had been telling them theirs has to be 1-for-1. I said, well, maybe there's some particular nuances that I'm not familiar with, but I think they just were misinformed or didn't realize that it had changed. So yes, it was definitely a good conference. And I did want to ask about, do we have an update on the asbestos remediation?
We don't have any asbestos in any of our units.
What about mold? What about the mold?
Mold is, right at the present time, we don't have any major issue, but with the humidity that's in this area here, and, you know, mold is a problem within this region, but we're staying on top. We're working on, whenever mold situations come, we're working on those individual units.
Okay, so the
it's
residents at this
continuation.
point are satisfied with what's going on with
So far, yes.
with the mold?
Yeah, because when issues come up, we go ahead and take care of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I do appreciate you getting back further on your reaching out with the community partners about the homeless population in the woods. My only other recommendation, I would prefer if you would, put something in writing to the chief of police on this, rather than just taking the verbal information from, the officers
I can kind of address that. The problem, twofold. If you look at the original email that came from the homeowner, the city was emailed on that.
Right.
That's the reason why the police went out to the site. And when the police went out to the site, they realized that, first of all, the site doesn't belong to the housing authority. they don't know whether the site belonged to the city or the railroad, and they're working on that. But his email not only came to us, but I think he was under the impression that we own what the site where the tents was at. That's why he sent the email to the housing authority as well as to the city. So I guess what I'm trying to say to you, based on the location, it's not a housing authority issue, but we have no control over that particular site at all. That's the reason why I took the pictures that I did. I went out there. I took the pictures and sent them to all the commissioners. The city's aware of it. They have been out there, and what the city's going to do to resolve the issue, I don't know, because the fact is, I do know the police have been out there. The homeless gentleman did say to me, yes, the police came out there, and the police told him at this time they would just get back to him.
But when you say that the city is aware, be more specific. Who within the city? Because I'm specifically saying to you, I would prefer that you send a letter, Mr. Land, to the chief of police concerning this issue, so that nothing falls in between the cracks. And by sending the letter to the chief of police, she can also keep it in her basket to have oversight over. See, I don't want us to think that just because it's not our property, that we don't have a responsibility, because we're neighbors. We're all neighbors, and we're each other's keeper. And we just can't say, well, it's not on our property, because, as I said, that homeless population can easily start trespassing on our properties or on other homeowners' properties that came about through PRHA. So we have to look at it from a community perspective, and don't just be satisfied with, well, it's not on our property. It, as I stated to you, it abuts our property, and you have to stay vigilant about making sure that it doesn't become a bigger issue, and the next thing you know, they're, setting up shop in the backyards of our properties. So that's why I want you to stay engaged in the process. And the way to do that, to create your own communication, internal control, is to send a letter to the chief of police. I know she's new in her position officially, but she needs to be engaged in this process at the level next to the city manager, as well as the city manager.
We did, Mr. O's, tally, circle, sent an email out, and it came to all of the council members, the mayor, and also Dr. Patton, city manager's office, city attorney, all of us got
Did
the
Chief
email.
of Police get it?
Chief of Police did not get the email. So Dr. Patton responded that she would get right on it, that she would have the Chief of Police staff to send someone right over. And so once that happened, I suppose that someone from the police department went over. So they're in the process of trying to determine who the property owner is. Clearly, if it's not PRHA, then the city will have to deem if it is the property of the railroad or the city. And at that point, they would be able to enforce if this person would move. And I know it's an eyesore because it's right in the back of Mr. O's, property line. And of course, I wouldn't want, to have an easement where someone's building up shop, putting tents in my backyard either. But since it's not a PRHA issue, I think we would still need to, Dr. Patton has the email that she would contact the police department. So you all were copied on that, and I think I spoke with someone, I think it Val, did I mention it to you? I called and I mentioned because he brought it to me, and I thought that it was a PRHA property as well, and so, it was addressed in that manner, and so.
Well, I don't understand what's the delay in ascertaining the ownership, because that's why we have the real estate
The city
tax records.
assessor, Billy Butts will be able to.
It's very
clearly
easy to find
to
out
identify, so,
if it's the railroad.
Yeah.
Or if it's.
And I can follow back up, because as the liaison, I have my meeting on Tuesday, and I can bring it back that there was a concern and that PRHA is still interested in finding out who the property owner is so that this matter could be rectified.
Yes.
So
I
would do
would,
that.
yes, I would encourage that, because see, at the end of the day, we end up with a legal liability if for some reason that homeless population,
Start setting up shop.
or they crime, and it involves the children. you know, right there, Swanson Home, as well as the other developments right along South Street. I mean, we cannot be complacent just because it's not legally on our property, because it abuts, and when I say abuts, to our property, it backs up to our property, and you know, you want to stop it you want to, you know, you want everybody involved. The homeless consortium, you know, if they can get involved in placing the individuals who have, you know, found the need to do that, you know, then, you know, we need to be involved in that process, you know.
Well, I think we have an email circle of everybody who's involved in it, so my meeting is Tuesday, so I will take it back and I will
Hopefully have a
send it back.
response for them. Okay,
Thank
thank
you,
you, Vice Mayor.
All right, we done. Public speaking, no, we ain't got none.
It's
I
too
gotta
hot
say this.
outside.
Public speaking period, chair allows up to 5 minutes to speak. We have any correspondence? Nope. All right, upcoming events. August 2019, regular scheduled board meeting, commissioners, 8:15. And then October 2019, we have 10:21, public work session, joint meeting with city council. There being nothing else. Chair's move, need a motion for adjournment.
Motion.
Second.
I know it's proper session. Thank you.
Early